Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Modern Warfare in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the brand new AN-94 assault rifle, which is a very interesting weapon, and there's a lot of stats for me to talk about. This weapon is unlocked for free at tier 31 of the Season 5 Battle Pass, so you don't have to buy the Battle Pass, just play the game, and at tier 31 you get this for free. That represents roughly 30 hours of gameplay, which I think is fair, and it's relatively early into the Battle Pass. The early opinion on this weapon is that its strength will vary greatly by mode. As you'll see as we go through the statistics today, some modes the AN-94 is incredibly strong, a top tier weapon, and other modes it's kind of mediocre because it's so specialized and its unique firing rate doesn't work well in all modes. But instead of the fire rate, let's start off with the damage today. The AN-94 will deal 46 damage to the head, decreasing down to 35 at a distance. Chest shots will be 34 up close and 24 at a distance, so that's still a 3-shot kill to the chest, and it doesn't seem to matter if you hit the stomach or anything else. That's pretty much all body right there. The limbs, however, take a pretty significant damage hit and decrease down to 29 to 20, which make it a 4 or 5-shot kill depending on how far away your enemy is and how many limb hits you're hitting, which can get quite frustrating on this weapon, especially with its somewhat awkward recoil. So while the AN-94 can kill in 3 shots based on my personal playtime and experience, I always bank on it being a 4-shot kill. I think betting on 4 shots depending on your range and accuracy is a very, very safe bet, and you can't 2-tap to the head either. The AN-94's rate of fire is what makes it very interesting. Like its real-life counterpart, it has a burst fire mode or hyper fire mode that fires 2 shots very fast for each trigger pull. And we've had some guns in COD where like the first couple bullets shot faster or dealt more damage, and it's not that. It's not the first bullets in the magazine, and it's not stopping power or anything goofy. It's every individual trigger pull. So if you pull the trigger once, it'll burst fire 2 and then go to its regular rate of fire. And if you stop, then you can just pull the trigger again, burst it again, and regular rate of fire again. Even when you put it in semi-automatic mode, you just toggle it over, it's still a 2-shot burst. You can't put it in single fire no matter what you do. The rate of fire, or the numerical stats for this, is that the burst will fire at 900 rounds per minute, which is very fast for an assault rifle, and especially fast for an assault rifle when we talk about the ranges that this gun has. Then the regular rate of fire is significantly slower at 560 rounds per minute. As a matter of fact, that's rather underwhelming for assault rifles and will not have a particularly good time to kill. And the burst delay on this weapon is 115 milliseconds, and I will tell you that it will feel incredibly fast. If you put it in the select fire mode and just spam those 900 RPM shots, you can shoot it just about as fast as you want to, and you probably can't oversample it. On the topic of oversampling, I find it a little bit suboptimal to leave it in regular mode and try to time the 900 RPM bursts. What I always do is I shoot about 3 or 4 times and waste a little bit of time with the 500 RPM shots. So that's, maybe it's just my feel, maybe my timing's not good. I prefer to either run it with the burst and then full auto, or just burst only. When it comes down to all of this, numerically, the AN-94 has a very competitive time to kill if you hit your first 3 shots. And I want to be really clear that this is extremely dependent on your accuracy. You need to have your first 3 shots hit the chest. And if that's true, it actually kills people quite quickly. The practice on that, though, is that you're missing shots and the time to kill goes down drastically. The AN-94 takes a lot of shots to kill if you're hitting limbs. Limbs are pretty brutal on this weapon because by the time you're hitting those, your fire rate's lower. Or if you're playing Warzone. Enemies just have a lot of health in Warzone, and 34 damage for chest shots isn't a whole lot. So the time to kill isn't going to be super fast, even if you're doing the 900 RPM burst, or especially not if you're doing the 560 RPM regular fire mode. But the burst is better in my opinion. So those are the basic stats of the AN-94. After this, I want to talk about some handling, range, and aim down sights time stats, which are also very interesting. But first, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, which is Astro Gaming. They finally have products back in stock. They've been sold out due to supply chains getting smashed in this pandemic, and honestly, quite a lot of sales because people are buying them for their online classes. The A10s are back in stock, which is the best value headset on the market. You will get something that will last you a decade for 60 bucks. I had to run mine over with a car to break it. The A50s are also back in stock. This is their ultra premium comfort line, and that's what I used for years before I transitioned over to this beautiful pink pair of A40s right here, but all their stuff's back in stock, and if you want to help me out on this channel, just click the link in the description. Even if you don't plan to buy anything, just getting a ton of clicks and through traffic on the website makes me look like a fantastic sponsor, but I do hope some of you pick up some headsets. It's a great company. All right, so back onto the stats for the AN-94. The recoil on the two-shot burst is low and almost exclusively vertical. If you were to do a plot of this, it pretty much looks like a straight line up. It's very easy to control, and it's easier to compensate for between bursts, but not individually because it shoots so fast, not between shots. The recoil on the fully automatic part of this weapon, however, is kind of awkward. I find it difficult to use. It kind of likes to drift off and wobble to the side a little bit, which makes it hard to use, and I also think the iron sights are a sin against mankind. I had an extremely difficult time tracking my enemies with these iron sights. They're small, they're cluttery, they're clunky. This is a weapon that you definitely want to be running a red dot or VLK sight on. Okay, so let's talk about one of the things the AN-94 is good at, which is range. It has incredible range. The base maximum damage range is 33 meters. If you put the smaller barrel on there, it only goes down to 27, which isn't much of a penalty. The heavier barrel that will also reduce recoil takes it up to 43 meters. And the VLK barrel, the last one, it's like the VLK AN-94 Silva, that one will take it up to 54 meters, which is just a colossal range improvement. And finally, if you stack that with the monolithic suppressor and just go for truly maximum range, I was able to measure it at 70 meters, which is just extremely long range for an assault rifle. And this is extremely impressive, especially with that last barrel and monolithic suppressor. That puts you right up there with like LMG or like AK-47 fully kitted range. That is some serious range on this weapon, and given its unique burst and damage output, maintaining that over range gives it a lot of lethality, at least in base multiplayer. I think the weapon's range is its greatest strength. Aim down sights times are a little bit on the slow side. The base ADS is 283 milliseconds, which is the same as the AK and some of the heavier ARs. The smaller barrel will go down 2 frames to 250. The heavier barrel goes up a frame to 300, and the VLK barrel that I love so much goes up to 300 as well. So I don't really know why you would run the heavy barrel over the VLK unless you just really want range reduction, recoil reduction. Moving along in ADS, the talke laser massively reduces your aim down sights time down to 200 milliseconds. That's probably one of the top tier attachments for this weapon. That's just really, really strong. Folded stock will take it down to 233, and I put an asterisk on that one because it was kind of splitting frames on my measurement. Close quarters combat stock, slightly faster at 216, but again, kind of splitting frames there. They're a little bit less powerful than the talke laser, and the VLK stock, which is kind of like your skeleton stock, a little bit less effective, takes you down 2 frames from base to 250. The 45 round mags don't seem to have any effect on your weapon. This is the same as the base. The 60 round mags will increase it by 2 frames and slow your run speed down, so I tend not to go with them. Stippled grip tape, or I think it's got a different name for it, but the equivalent of stippled is 283 milliseconds, so no change from base whatsoever. When you take a look at sprint out times, what you'll see is that it has a 267 millisecond sprint out time, which is pretty normal for this type of rifle in the game. The 5 milliwatt laser will only take it down a few frames to 233 milliseconds. However, that stippled grip does wonders for your sprint out time and cuts it down to a ridiculous, like shaves 50 milliseconds off it. It goes straight down to 216. So that's kind of an awesome attachment for your sprint out time. And your minimum handling stats are 183 milliseconds on the aim down sight. So you can actually kit this one with a lot of attachments that modify your ADS speed and stack them and make it very snappy. And your sprint out time is still 216 milliseconds. Even if you stack the laser and the stippled, it doesn't get any better than the stippled itself, so there's really no reason to run both of those. When it comes to attachments, this weapon has a unique muzzle brake that doesn't seem to be very different from a regular one. I thought it would do something cool or unique, but it just seems to have an unusual name for the muzzle brake. One of the attachments I really do like, though, is that it has a unique thermal sight, which I think is the very last one you unlock on this weapon. The color scheme is much more generous for those of us that are colorblind. It has great optics, great range. It doesn't hurt your ADS time too much, even though it is a little bit slow. And I've had a lot of fun with the thermal sights. They're not perfect. Yes, it's annoying when people run cold-blooded, but they're definitely worth looking into. VLK is probably the way to go, though. So, opinion time. Now that we've gone over all the stats on the AN-94, I think the AN-94 is a mediocre weapon in regular 6v6 multiplayer. Its time to kill is a little bit fast if you're very accurate, but Oftentimes people are going to be at range, you're going to miss shots, there's some awkward handling things about the weapon. It's not a super snappy handling weapon either, you have to have sights on it because the irons are terrible, and by the time you're really done compensating for all of the flaws of this weapon, it's just kind of mediocre and ultimately harder to use than the other simple full-on, full-auto rifles that just spray people into the ground. I also think that it's mediocre in Warzone, if not slightly worse than average. In Warzone, it's kind of interesting in medium range because you can really hammer people with that 900 RPM burst fire. It's like a better FAMAS or kind of like a DMR, like an Odin or something. You can just kind of slap with it, but it really struggles up close. It really struggles at extreme ranges because you're going to have recoil between the shots. And if you put it back in fully automatic mode, the time to kill is just super slow. So it's interesting in Warzone, but I don't think that it's very good. However, there's one place where the AN-94 truly shines, and I think that it might be a god gun for ground war. Hear me out on this one. You can put it in burst fire mode and two-tap anybody up to like 70 meters, which is pretty good range, and it just murders people in burst mode at those ranges. You get your recoil low, you get your range high, put a VLK or thermal sight on it, and you can just two-tap enemies all day. If you're missing or if they're super far away, three-tap, big whoop, they still die really, really quick. I had a fantastic time using this weapon on ground war. I found it to be very easy, very accurate, have excellent range. It does all the things that I want it to do in ground war, and when I have to, when I get desperate, I still can swap it back over to fully automatic and make it a little bit spammy and spray up close. So if you want to level the AN-94, if you just want to use this weapon, I think ground war is by far the best place for it. It just kind of helps because you have long range engagement, which the weapon's great at, and the health is lower than Warzone, so you can two-tap a lot of people. So I've got two classes to share at the very end of the video. This is my best 6v6 multiplayer AN-94 class. I like running the red dot sight, the 300mm barrel, which is the small one, tac laser, folded stock, and lightweight suppressor. This basically gives me a suppressor that doesn't hurt my range that much, red dot sight, and all of the fastest speed attachments to make it a very snappy rushing kind of weapon. And I try very hard to hit my first two shots, and when I rush and I'm very accurate with the weapon, it performs quite well. In the full auto mode I can rely on when I'm desperate. For ground war or for Warzone, this is my murder everyone in ground war class. You want to run a VLK or thermal sight. Realistically, the VLK sight's probably the better one, but the thermal one's not bad, and it is interesting. You want to run the last barrel, which is the VLK AN-94 Sila barrel. 45 round mags instead of 60 just keeps the gun a little bit snappier and you don't need that many bullets. Monolithic suppressor to stay off the radar and increase the range, and tac laser to compensate for any of this miserable slow aim down sights time you're going to get. And what you've got is a super good DMR type long range weapon that just absolutely shreks people in ground war. And if you want to run the weapon in Warzone, which I don't really recommend, I think you should use the same class as the ground war class. The ground war class will work just as well in Warzone. Leave it in burst mode, burst people, and have an MP5 for close quarters combat. Well guys, that's all for this episode of In Depth. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and I'll be back very soon with the ISO SMG In Depth. Drifter out.